Right. Welcome to the Write the Docs seminar, AI in the Workplace, Sorting Hype from Reality. This seminar is sponsored by Write the Docs, an international organization representing professional technical writers and communicators. We're going to have two segments to this seminar. The first part is a review of the data related to our speaker, Dr. Stephen Carradini, and his research into the status of AI adoption in the workplace. And then in the second half of the second part, we're going to do some Q&A. And just by way of introduction, my name is Rick Larson, and I'm a tech writer here in Phoenix. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Carradini, and we'll get started.
Okay. Thank you, Rick, and thank you, Lou, for inviting me to talk today. I'm happy to be here to talk about uh, AI in the workplace, and hopefully, over the course of the talk, we'll be able to distinguish some hype from some reality. I do work in the technical communication program at Arizona State University. I've been there the starting of my ninth year, and I'm very happy to be here today. So. We're going to talk after the introduction. We're going to talk about five areas of discussion surrounding the workplace and AI: job seeking, job keeping, task augmentation, which is actually the work, doing the work, the organizational outlook on AI, and a long-term outlook on what AI might be in the future. So, uh, one of the biggest problems right now of AI is that there are a lot of mixed messages, and that's because there's a lot of people who are very interested and invested in AI financially, logistically, practically, but there are also many people who are skeptical of AI for financial, practical, or technical reasons. So there's really a wide uh, range of opinions on what's happening. And so all of these messages are flying around. And so we're going to break some down and talk about what's really happening in relation to these. And so with job seeking, some people are saying that, look, unemployment is still really low. AI can't be taking our jobs if no one's looking for jobs. Versus people are saying, look, the job market is bad. I've been on the job market a while now, and I'm not finding jobs, and the market is bad. And like these can't necessarily uh, seem to both be true. Uh, but there's other narratives here, like AI will take our jobs, probably the most common narrative, versus AI will make everything more efficient. So you won't lose your job, you'll just be more efficient. Are these true? We're going to talk about that. AI is easy. People who are trying to promote or evangelize AI will often say, like, AI tools are easy. But sometimes you'll get a different narrative that says like AI tools are very hard to implement. There was a report recently from Gartner and a similar one from MIT that had a very negative outlook on how implementation for tools was going in workplaces. So um, our organizational outlook is AI is cheap versus AI expensive. So you'll hear people say, look, AI tools are cheap. It's 20 bucks a month. Like that's not a big deal for ChatGPT. Or you'll hear people say, look, AI really does cost a lot and we're going to have to pay for that, which is true. We'll talk about it. And finally, the long-term outlook. This is the worst version of AI you'll ever use. If you've heard that before, that's one narrative about the future trajectory of AI. And then there's another one that says, this is it. This is AI. This is what we get with AI. And so we'll talk about what that looks like. So first off, job seeking. Unemployment is low. It's true. Uh, Even with some recent shocks to the job numbers in May and June, some revisions to the job numbers, unemployment is still pretty low. And furthermore, before the May and June revisions to the labor numbers, which showed that there were more unemployed people than we expected, There really hadn't been any major shifts in unemployment rate over the last 3 years since ChatGPT was released in November 2022. So there really hasn't been a whole lot of change in raw numbers in terms of unemployment, and that's good. We like that. We want unemployment to stay low. Um, Also, there are other underlying indicators about how unemployment looks. So they're broken out in different categories in the labor statistics monthly reports, and those indicators are also mostly good. There is a slight uptick in what are called discouraged workers, people who think there are no jobs available for them, but it's been about 200 extra thousand people uh, over the about 7 million people who are unemployed and the 130 some odd million people who are employed. So this is a very small number, and we want that number to stay low. So that's good. However, it is unavoidable that there are anecdotally and starting to become more data on there is a tough job market. So how can there be a tough job market in unemployment? Well, there's different types of indicators that are looking sort of negative for the job market. So hiring has not been strong over the past 6 months to a year, and that was a particular sign when we did receive some unexpected numbers, revision numbers for labor statistics in May and June that showed that the labor market was not quite as strong as we thought it was. But the big sign is that early career hiring has particularly been affected. So the number of early career positions that have been offered and that have been accepted are down. Early career employment by some metrics is about 0.7% higher than regular unemployment. That's not good. We don't like to see that. That indicates that there is some underlying tensions that are stopping businesses from doing what we would expect to be a normal hiring pattern of some juniors, some mid-careers, and some seniors. Usually fewer seniors just because of the fewer number of senior positions open in companies, but you still want to see a uh, fairly even distribution of the types of jobs available. Um, and the last icon or item that points towards some difficulties in the underlying market is that there's been low job movement across various industries. So people are keeping their jobs, and you may have seen the phrase job hugging has appeared, where people are just holding on to whatever jobs they have, whether they're good, bad, or other, because they're worried that whatever is out there is worse than what's in here. And that idea of job hugging and low job movement and low hiring can be considered a response to AI changing the types of jobs that are needed to be hired for. But I think there are also other economic factors that are at play, some of which are complex and some of which are more blunt. But it does seem like AI, especially when it comes to early career hiring, is having some sort of impact, but we don't really know what that is yet. And it's really only in about the last year that we've started to see some of these shifts. Now, there have been some early adopter AI companies as far back as 2023 that said, we're going to push our way over to AI as quickly as possible. And those early adopter companies, some of them have shown from 2023 onwards a lower level of early career hiring overall. Obviously, this is a significant problem if this remains low, but I think we don't know the answer to that yet because of other economic indicators. Uh, so the first thing I have to say is that the job market is bad and unemployment is low at the same time, and that's a really strange situation. AI might be involved, but also it's just there's a lot of factors going on. Uh, so now we can move more into like AI proper, things that like are much more directly related to AI and that I can speak on with a little bit more certainty, thankfully. So in people who are worried about AI taking our jobs, I see this as mostly not true. So there have been some high profile companies that have said, look, we're going all in on AI. We're really not going to be hiring anybody. We're just going to stick with AI. Klarna, Shopify, and Duolingo are the three sort of big ones here. Klarna has like stayed the course on that, and they just want to be that sort of company. But Shopify and Duolingo got hit with backlash, and they sort of pulled back their statements a little bit. And Duolingo said, "Oh, you don't really understand what we meant. That's not what we meant." And Shopify sort of tried to like explain it away, and they've continued to sort of try to walk that back a little bit because there was backlash. People did not like it when they said we're just gonna do AI instead of people because people like to work with other people, like customers want to work with people. Um, and so most companies that are using AI are not promoting their AI as replacement level or intending it to be replacement level. And this is for a variety of reasons that I'll talk about further. But most companies are not saying, like, yeah, we're going to replace everybody with AI and we're excited about it. Klarna, yes. Other companies, not so much. Really not a big narrative that I see happening. However, a lot of these companies are saying AI will make everything efficient. And this has been a mixed bag. One of the most interesting things to me about AI as a person who studies AI, implementation of technology is that AI has sort of an unusual set of implementation aspects in that when individuals use AI for their work, they do and sometimes see very good, they do see some positive outcomes. Individuals using AI can get their work done in ways that see positive outcomes if they know what they want to do with AI and they're interested in tweaking and playing with the AI output to some extent. So individuals can pretty quickly, with pretty limited run-up, see some positive benefits. However, whole organization use of AI often runs into implementation problems. And the implementation problems, uh, often implementation challenges come at the front line where there's managers and CEO level people who are very excited about a technology and they try to bring it to the front line and it just doesn't work well. Well, the front line is to some extent already using AI, but trying to implement AI across a whole organization, even with sometimes willing frontline workers, has been harder because implementing AI is not like just buying a new set of technologies. It's really trying to think through a new workflow for existing work. And an individual can think through that workflow pretty easily, but a whole organization trying to reframe people's workflows with or for them is hard. It's not an easy lift. And so because it is sort of a different type of technology than we have. It's sort of similar to when email was implemented into corporate spaces, but even then, email was sort of added on top of things, um, as opposed to being like reframing all the work that's already there. Although it eventually did reframe the work that was there. Um, so there's possibilities for AI to be efficient, but there's also a lot of possibilities for a whole organization to just really struggle to get enough people on board to be the whole organization doing this AI thing. So replacement language is really unpopular and positive individual uses can be found, but whole organizations sometimes and pretty well often can struggle to get whole organization level efficiencies out of it. Um, that flows right into actually using the AI tools. One thing that is distinctive about AI tools is that they were from the beginning set up to be very user friendly and have a very low user adoption curve. It is not hard to learn how to use ChatGPT in terms of the amount of time it takes in comparison to something like Madcap or um, Adobe Suite tools, things like this. It's a very low barrier to entry. Um, but even though you can just start getting things out immediately, the learning curve on getting AI tools to do exactly what you want is higher. So it gets um, touchy very quickly. And some people power through and get to the place where they're really comfortable with getting the machine to do the sorts of things they wanted to do. But there are people that just give up or only use it for certain things because the other things they wanted to do, they don't know how to make it do, or it just can't do those sorts of things because there are things that AI still struggle to do, um, even advanced ones. And so uh, some AI tools specifically are made with limitations that make them unable to do what a user wants. If there's types of work that have to do with um, types of content that are deemed difficult or unavailable to certain types of tools, um, then you just may not be able to get an answer out of the bot, or you may get nothing at all. That makes sense. And this relates mostly to specialized tools. ChatGPT, unfortunately, will give you an answer on almost everything you try to give it a question on, which is a flaw, not a feature in some ways. There have been some prominent news stories about it doing very negative responses to people responding with mental health queries, and that's a bad time. So sometimes limitations are good. Um, as I mentioned before, AI tools can be hard to implement at an organizational level. It costs overhead time to get stuff set up. It does cost money, and it costs a lot of people hours. There's a lot of training that has to go in to get people who are interested but don't have that initial curve worked out yet. That has to be trained, or people just won't go farther with the tools if they hit the end of their curiosity. Um, there have been some recent reports, like I said, from MIT and Gartner that show that many whole organization efforts do not produce bottom line profit efficiency, which is a pretty big concern for companies that are spending money on these sorts of tools. And there's evidence that many whole organization efforts are abandoned in under a year, so people don't give them a lot of runtime. And again, that's because, in my estimation, if people aren't seeing the value in a year or less, then they just aren't going to get there. They need to have more onboarding or training, or have better connection to the tools, and sometimes that's just not there. Sometimes it's the work that has to be done crowds out the ability to learn this particular tool, or any other number of reasons that tools don't get adopted. So uh, individuals can use AI effectively. I think probably everybody at this point knows someone who's like, I am so productive with AI. And I think that's true. But I think implementing it at the managerial level across a whole unit or a whole company is much harder. And that's a bigger challenge. Now we're moving into the bigger outlooks here, the organizational outlook. One of the selling points of AI is that originally it was free, and then it became pretty cheap. $20 a month is what some versions of ChatGPT cost, and other tools are similar or a little lower. And this is true. That's cheap for an individual seat, for an individual license. And another unique element of AI is that because they run through cloud computing, they're basically like YouTube. Like, you don't have to do any computing power really to run these tools at a basic level, which is highly unusual. It doesn't even take up space on your computer, which, for as powerful a tool as AI is, that's amazing. But uh, that makes it seem like AI is cheap, but really AI is really expensive. Anyone who's had to look at cloud computing costs over a whole organization knows that there's a lot of cost behind cloud computing. It's really valuable for organizations so that they don't have certain concerns and liabilities, but it is a cost, and adding AI into your existing costs is non-trivial for a lot of companies. So many AI tools right now are being run at a steep loss so that people can use the tech. OpenAI offered to let any government agency use their tools for $1. Um, and I don't know what the term was, a month, a year, I don't know. But the point was is that they were running a stunt that said like, hey, use it for free, like it, and then, you'll be a user of this technology and you'll be able to disseminate it that way because you're in the government. So they're running it at a loss to try to do loss leader type things and get AI tools into regular circulation. However, as soon as AI tools cost money, when they cost as much as they actually really are being charged to companies like OpenAI, companies don't want to buy it. Their AI companies have had a very difficult time so far passing real costs on to the end user companies. And that's why AI companies lose a lot of money. AI is not profitable right now. OpenAI said that they expect to be profitable in 2029, but they lost $5 billion last year. So it's going to be a long haul even to get there to 2029 if they can't figure out how to pass costs on to companies. So AI is priced cheaply now, but it's definitely not actually cheap, and that's going to change over time, which is where we end up on the long-term outlook. One of the quirkiest phrases that I come across fairly often is this is the worst version of AI you'll ever use, which is sort of a strange way to hype your own tools. But what they're trying to say when they say this is that tomorrow's AI will be better than today's AI. And it's not going to go backwards. We're not going to get worse at this. And so if you like what you see today, you're going to really like it tomorrow. And that's potentially true. Like AI abilities have grown exponentially from 2021 to 2025. We've made some real breakthroughs technically, technologically. There have been some very uh, astonishing levels of uptake for these new abilities. Um, and there's there's a possibility that this will just continue to grow. Even if AI abilities don't continue to grow, new applications of existing tech can produce new capabilities for users. So someone who just stumbles across Chat GPT today will be able to apply it, and they may be doing things that were 3 years ago's cutting edge, but it's brand new and cutting edge to them right now. So there are possibilities of it continuing to grow. Even if it doesn't continue to grow, just using the tech that we have now could produce a lot of unique and interesting applications for people in the workplace. Um, Countermeasure to that is some people argue this is it. We've reached a limit. GPT-5 was a total dud. Sam Altman of OpenAI came out on a Thursday and said, okay, that was bad. GPT-5 was not really an improvement over GPT-4. But then the next day he was hawking GPT-6 because he has to, because that's his next product for his company. And so, but there's no reason to believe that GPT-6 will be better because GPT-5 was not any better, and they have not told us anything that would make GPT-6 better. They just have to put out a new model year, just like cars put out new model years. So even though that's true, there is no reason right now to believe that GPT-6 will be better than GPT-5. And there's no reason to believe that GPT-5 is in most ways better than GPT-4, although there are some applications that are in improvement. AI breakthroughs are usually big spikes with a long tail. So usually there will be a huge idea or concept or algorithm or change that bursts onto the scene. And then there'll be a really long tail where there's just minor iterations. And then there'll be another really big burst later. So the discovery of GPTs, Chat GPT, in 2022, in 2021, that was the big burst. The transformer concept was the big burst. And so you can argue that this has just been the long tail of working out what that one big concept was. And then we'll have to have another big concept at some point else to make up a new big boom. Um, And the weird thing about AI is that we don't really know if we're days or years away from another big breakthrough because it's very spiky. Like it goes in these unusual patterns and non-normal waves. Sometimes it's a decade between big changes, and sometimes it's not at all. So I can say from the literature I've read and from the current state of things that self-aware superintelligence does not seem likely. This is a thing that is a major concern because it comes up in the news a lot of runaway self-aware AIs. And we just don't seem close to it. Even if it was possible, and for this argument, I'm conceding that it's possible, we're not close. I'm not sure that it is possible, technically speaking, but even if it was, we're not close. So we just don't have the computing power, nor do we have any sort of sense of what a self-aware superintelligence would even look like or how we would get there. Um, and there are people who disagree with me on that, but I think that's safe enough to say. So AI will likely improve, but it is not clear how much, or when. So what does this all mean for the workplace? Jobs data is very messy and uneven right now, so what it means today is really unclear. And that is a bummer. Thank you for coming to my talk. I don't know anything. But other bits, individual uses of AI are more likely to be effective than whole organization uses, and I think this will continue for a while. I think that individual people will be able to reframe their own workflows due to their own curiosity and interest more effectively than having a top-down reformatting of how work is supposed to get done. Um, there are change management strategies that can be effective. There are different types of interventions that can produce good outcomes, but overall, it just takes a lot of work if you want to do a whole organization AI shift, and there's a lot of work to be done already. And so adding this big AI shift on top of things sometimes just doesn't work out. I do think AI is likely to get more expensive, which isn't good for AI because people are already struggling to implement it at a whole organizational level right now. And if it gets more expensive, I don't think that that's going to make it immediately more appealing. Now, if the feature set um, gets better, then there is a possibility that the expensiveness will be offset by the level of new feature. Um, we don't know. I don't think so, but it's possible. Um, and finally, AI is likely to improve, but it's not clear how, by how much, or when. I think people will keep researching, and so I don't think we've hit the ultimate ceiling on what AI can do. But I do think that we are going to hit an economic and feasibility ceiling before we hit the actual roof of what AI is technically capable of. So, so that's my talk. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm very interested to hear what your thoughts and questions and ideas are.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, if we could kind of have people raise their hands and we'll form a line and we'll get questions answered.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. And I'm kind of
Okay.
wondering if anyone has experienced this or has heard anything like this. So I'm a senior technical writer. I have about 6 years of experience, and I've worked in, I mean, technical writer in different industries, tech, currently in manufacturing, you just a lot experience in lots of industries. And what I'm seeing with AI is that, kind of to your point that you were saying, that those individuals who, like for example, recent graduates aren't really getting as much success, finding jobs. What I'm experiencing, which is I think is really interesting, is um, certain companies, the companies that I've worked for, are actually handing off those basic tasks, those elementary tasks that a junior associate technical writer might do. They're using AI to complete those tasks, and then they're handing over the advanced, more complex ideas and aspects of technical writing to other people in the workforce, like engineers or developers or project managers. And then that way, kind of pushing technical writers out. So it's kind of half will have AI do, and then the other half will have other individuals in that team do as well. Has anyone heard of that or experienced that?
So I'll jump in. If other people have thoughts, please jump in as well. But um, yeah, I have seen, especially at the junior level, that in lieu of hiring a junior, um, there's an attempt to recreate some documentation or some materials with AI, and then, as you said, like dump that on subject matter experts or on senior writers or on people who are tangentially related to the project, but are perceived to potentially be able to communicate effectively. Um, and I think this is a sort of natural reaction to like, hey, this thing spits out words. But I don't think that anybody who has extra work dumped on them for very long will love that tool which dumps that work on them, especially if it's not perceived to be necessary work, which, as a technical communications teacher and as a person who knows a lot of technical writers and works with a lot of companies, technical documentation can often be perceived as something that isn't the most important thing on the top of the list. And so, yes, there are companies that are trying to reorganize that particular workflow. Um, but I don't think it's going to last super long. I don't think that trend can hold without engineers being like, look, we're done doing this. Go hire somebody. Maybe not right now because hiring is in a strange spot, but it doesn't seem to me like a trend that the people who are actually having extra work placed on them will bear super long, especially if the job market improves and they can move to companies where they don't have to do documentation on top of whatever else they're doing, and they can just go back to doing the thing. So I have seen that. Some companies are trying that. Um, I don't know how long it can last, but it's a thing that is happening for sure.
I mean, I also think it's an interesting thought because you're right. Um, Currently, the job that I'm at right now, a lot of engineers are giving pushback because they don't want to write, they want to
Mhm.
engineer.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see. And then, of course, management will say, no, we want you to write. So it's a kind of back and forth.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure where it'll go from here, but it is interesting to see, the changes.
Yeah. In my experience, engineers that don't want to write end up being allowed to not write, otherwise they leave. So like they'll put up with it for a while, but eventually they'll say, hire somebody. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
You don't pay me to do this. And then management says, well, we do right now. And so I do think it is difficult. But again, I put all of this under the structural heading of like this is how they're trying to reorganize workflows. And that doesn't really work super great at an organizational level long term because people don't want their workflow reorganized. You have to do it from the bottom up. People want their own workflow. And if you want to redo your own workflow, that's great. Um, but that doesn't mean that there aren't companies that aren't trying this. They are. Um, the first time I looked at ChatGPT in November 2022, I said, well, here's the first thing that actually might be here's the first thing that managers are going to say, this will work. It doesn't in the long term, but um, yeah, I think it's a difficult integration to have a top-down, you get to write this thing now. Especially because editing AI content is an acquired skill. It's not easy. It's actually closer to technical editing, which is as us teachers know, is a very difficult skill to acquire. So it's not even just writing, it's technical editing, which is dense work. I
Erica.
see Erica.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephen. So interesting and well said. Um, my question is about how you talk to your students about what they're facing when they graduate and the kinds of skills that they should be um, developing, both AI skills and other tangential skills that might tide them over until the market gets better. Um, for technical writing.
Yeah.
So both those newbies and also people who are already in a job doing technical writing, what
Mhm.
can they do to sort of future-proof their skills?
Yeah, so when I'm talking to students, I tell them that being able to solve people's problems is never going out of style. If you have a way of thinking about problems that can put together solutions that can be achieved, that's goal number one. So that's critical thinking, that's understanding your environment, that's understanding people, understanding like this manager likes this manager likes that. Don't talk to this manager about that thing. So there's all these different relationships that are important. So that's step one is figure out how to solve people's problems and you'll never go out of business. But there are practical and technical things too, like media is important. So to being able to have some facility with images, which many technical writers already do. But that's an area where um, there's still a need for humans to be deeply involved in an image process, even if you're using AI, because it gets wonky. The AI image generators are have some quirks that are going to be difficult to iron out. So images are important. Video is important. Some companies don't do video very much, but it is something that distinguishes in the marketplace in terms of uh, usability, especially for younger populations. They want to see videos. So if you can do video and you can develop that. That's a skill that is in demand right now, and I think will remain in demand. Um, and I think broad-based understanding of how different workplaces work and what types of documents and materials make them go is important. So you may not have a lot of technical documentation on your plate right now, but what else does the organization need? How can I jump into this other area? Maybe I've never worked on this other type of document that we need. Maybe people think I don't have the ability to work on the other type of thing, like maybe social media or maybe like um, press releases or other types of genres that are related to the work of teaching people how to use technologies, um, but are not itself documentation. And again, like you said, uh, these are things that are to some extent nearer or farther from technical communication, right? I teach social media management in a technical communication program, so I'm very aligned with how do we use images in media and other sorts of platforms to get technical communication out there, but that may not be relevant or applicable to every organization. So I think that's the what I'm telling my students is that there's uh, there's some evergreen skills and then there are some practical things you can look for.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Rick.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was curious as far as like the general like level of adoption,
Mm.
excuse me, for these tools. Um, what do we have around like an agreed upon or like a standard for ethical use? Like where are the ethics in, is it the Wild West, or are there starting to be some principles emerging?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I teach the ethics course in our technical communication program, so I love talking about this. And there are a lot of people who want to put out tech ethics, AI ethics, codes of practice, principles, but in much the same way that individual adoption is working and organizational adoption is having troubles, individuals can adopt code of ethics, maybe even small groups, but getting a whole organization to be aligned to a overarching set of principles, ethical principles, is hard. The caveat for that is that there are a lot of AI safety policies that are coming from HR and legal down to people using AI tools. This mostly got kicked off when Samsung employees accidentally shared proprietary information into ChatGPT, and Samsung was not super stoked about that. And so policies of use that are mostly about privacy and corporate and personal safety are starting to become more common. So don't put personally identifying information in of your customers or clients, um, especially if you're under regulations like health from HIPAA or students for FERPA. Don't do that. Make sure that you know what the machine is doing. So some companies will let you opt out of having your data be sent back to the company for training. This used to be totally true for Anthropic's Claude, but starting at the end of the month, they you have to opt out. I did, but you have to purposely opt out, otherwise they will send your data back to the big database for further training. So really the overarching codes of ethics are coming down from corporate trying to protect themselves or going up from individual users trying to figure out what they think is okay or not okay. Most of the tech companies that are making these tools are ungoverned by law, and what laws there are, they are ignoring or claiming exceptions to. And so in terms of these tools being built, really it's just user backlash and uproar that governs them right now. Thankfully, the big moratorium that was proposed um, federally, 10-year moratorium on states making laws about AI, that was defeated. So there is room for states to make laws. And there are some states that are trying to make laws, but it's always a balance between stifling innovation and user protections. Colorado is going through this right now. They passed a law, and the tech companies in Colorado, one of which is in Boulder, namely Google, is not excited about it and trying to get it changed or repealed before it even goes into action. California almost passed a law, but the governor vetoed it. But then other states have put in laws against things like deep fakes for consumer and citizen protection. So it's not quite the Wild West, but it is very patchy. You never know who's going to be in charge of what, but someone may send you a set of rules and say, "Hey, HR said we got to do this," and like that's the law for this organization now. So it's people want to do this, but it's been hard. It has not been an easy lift to get organized regulatory ethical frameworks installed at a wide scale. There's one in the chat that says, you mentioned the need for different skills in tech writing. Can you recommend what specific software programs are currently in demand for tech comm jobs? So, to some extent, I don't know the answer to this because I have not looked specifically at job ads this year, which is about the scale that tools change. I was on research sabbatical in the spring. But I do know that we in our department we still believe in data. We still believe in Madcap Flare. We still believe in Adobe. We have used some new tools surrounding user experience for those tech writers who are aligned more with user experience. We have leaned in more to Figma and to Coda and to some of the newer um, tools for organizing workflows and things like this. Um, but yeah, I can say what we're doing, and we do try to keep up with industry. We do try to make sure that we're not totally behind. But the one of the everlasting arguments in our department is whether we should be teaching concepts more or tools more, because we want to give our students the tools they need, but the tools are changing so frequently that it feels like it's a moving target. So I don't think I don't think we're the best people to ask. Unfortunately, I think we trail behind a little bit because we're just slower movers in terms of our curriculum than the tools are constantly shifting. So I don't have a great answer for that other than what we actually still teach students.
Jacqueline.
I just kind of wanted to add on to that as well. So that's something that I've struggled with as well, is trying to identify specifically which programs employers are looking, programs employers want you to be familiar with. And as I'm looking through the different openings, I mean, it varies so much, specifically with different industries. So if I'm in software, um, usually with a big tech company, they have certain software programs that are already established and have been established for a long time, and they want you to know that. So for example, Data is really, really big. It's very, very efficient. Or
Yeah.
in other companies, in other industries, there's Madcap Flare, which is very, very popular. So I think my advice for that is you would have to really determine which industry you would want to work in and then look at that job description. And then that would probably tell you which software programs they would want you to know.
Yeah.
But I think it just kind of depends on the company.
Yeah, it really does. We're launching a health and medical information degree in our program, and it's a completely different world out there in terms of what they do and what they expect and the sorts of things that they're looking for. So um, it does vary by field, but yeah, I think I'm someone in Kelly is calling out Dita in the chat. Like I think Dita is pretty good. Git is also useful tech to be familiar with, especially at tech companies, Git and GitHub. Yeah. Um, but yeah, it varies a lot. Unfortunately, we've created a lot of tools in this world. Oxygen, yeah, we started using Oxygen recently, Oxygen XML. Um, Markdown is pretty good. Um, yeah, yeah. Did a Madcap Flare and Git. Yeah, that that's kind of what I would say Git maybe a little less than the first two, but yeah, those three. Yeah. But again, we're definitely not the the best people to be asking from our vantage point, unfortunately.
Just a comment on data. A couple of years ago when ChatGPT first came out, I did sort of a personal experiment where I took an essay that was, a structured essay with, sections and subsections, and I give ChatGPT the data uh, spec and this essay and ask it to create XML data modules. And it did. I mean, it went through two tries, but it created modules that I can bring directly into Oxygen and link into a map and create a PDF. So,
Yeah, I think, the underlying tenet of a transformer is that if there's data in the system that looks like that, you can make something that looks like that. And so for those who want to augment their workflows, like you can do a lot pretty well as long as you can frame a question in a way that relates to existing data, which is its own skill. There is a lot you can do with AI, but um, You also have to keep in mind, proprietary information, which for certain types of work, everything you do with documents is proprietary information, and so AI is not going to be super helpful. For some sorts of organizations, you're going to be working with materials that are one-time use a lot. And so generating them is fine, but it's not going to like save time because you're not going to use that document over and over again. So it's all about workflows. It's all about what people want to do, how they want to do their work. If there's a problem that they have in their workflow, maybe AI can help, maybe it can't, but it's becoming more of like a workflow augmentation tool than anyone really expected it to be, especially people who wanted it to be an everything bot, which it's not. Any other questions?
If not, Rick, back to you.
That sounds good. Going going once. There's always last second questions, but okay. Well, in closing, on behalf of Write the Docs Phoenix, I'd like to thank Dr. Carradini for taking the time to come and share this research with us and get a view of what's coming with AI. Just a couple of quick notes. Once the recording is ready and posted, we'll send out a link to everybody with that, and well as a link to the slides, and also send that out over the Meetup mail. So keep an eye on the Meetup. Write the Docs Phoenix. We do monthly networking events and then once a quarter seminars like this. So um, watch this space for future events and hope to see you soon. Thanks.
Thank you all for coming.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
thanks, Stephen.